My husband is a doctor. For years, he was the one who looked after my health. He always said everything was normal. One day, I fainted and was taken to the hospital. The doctor frowned as he looked at the test results and said a sentence that made my blood run cold. The X-ray was hanging on the light box. A cold, bluish light illuminated the expressionless face of the doctor sitting across from me. He wore thick glasses and was carefully observing what he called an anomalous finding. I could no longer hear any more reassuring, professional words. My ears weren't ringing, nor did I feel dizzy. Everything simply felt too clear, cruelly clear. "Mrs. Miller, these are the results of the core needle biopsy we performed yesterday," the doctor said, clearing his throat once, searching for the gentlest possible words. "The results indicate malignant cells, that is, an infiltrating ductal carcinoma, malignant, cancer." Those words should have shattered me, but they didn't. I just sat there, sitting in the worn leather chair of a small private practice, feeling the cold draft of the air conditioning on the back of my neck. I had already suspected it. My woman's intuition told me that the lump lodged deep in my left breast was not a simple nodule or a common fibrocystic change. Ironically, my husband, Jake, was a renowned oncologist in Chicago. He was the star professor at the hospital, a man they called the surgeon with golden hands, and patients from all over the country flocked to get a single appointment with him. With those same hands that had saved hundreds of lives, he had dismissed my concerns time and time again. "You're being overly sensitive. I'm the expert, understand? It's nothing." The doctor in front of me, a complete stranger, was saying the words my husband should have said. "Fortunately, we've caught it at an intermediate stage, but there are no distant metastases yet. We will develop a treatment plan immediately. You will need surgery, chemotherapy, and possibly radiation therapy." I nodded, but my mind was already somewhere else. I remembered that night 3 weeks ago, the night our son Matthew had a high fever. I remembered how I tried to call Jake, but the phone remained eerily silent, and I remembered how he looked when he finally came home, rambling and making excuses. Above all, I vividly remembered the moment his hand paused for just an instant on my left breast. In that precise instant, I knew. He knew. "Eleanor, are you listening to me?" The doctor looked at me with concern. "Your husband, Dr. Jake Miller, he's an oncologist, isn't he? Surely he too—" "I understand, doctor," I interrupted him. My voice was strangely calm. "Thank you. Could you give me a copy of my entire medical record? The original and the copies, please." I picked up my purse and walked out of the hospital. The afternoon sun in Chicago was warm and biting. I didn't go home. I didn't call Jake. I went straight to a quiet coffee shop and ordered a glass of water. I sat there, watching people pass by, and began to organize everything in my mind with the speed of a machine. I took out my phone. I didn't have many friends in my contact list. Most were the numbers of Matthew's teachers, the local grocery store, and my husband's family. I scrolled past the name I love without hesitation. I searched for another name, Alex Carter, attorney, a young lawyer I had helped when he was a recent graduate in the legal department of my old company. The phone rang 3 times before Alex answered. "Alex Carter speaking." "Alex? It's Eleanor, your old boss." "Ah, Eleanor, long time no see. How have you been? To what do I owe the call?" Alex's voice was as cheerful and enthusiastic as I remembered. I took a deep breath, not to calm myself, but to prepare my question. "Alex," I said in a steady voice, "I have to ask you something. By any chance, do you handle attempted murder cases?" There was a silence on the other end of the line, a heavy silence in which only Alex's breathing could be heard. I knew this was just the beginning. People looked at my marriage with envy, even jealousy. And I know why. My husband is Dr. Jake Miller. At 40, he became the youngest department head at one of Chicago's most prestigious university hospitals. He had the handsome, intellectual good looks of a mature man. He spoke eloquently, acted like a gentleman, and was always the center of attention at every family gathering. Whenever I had a work dinner or we went to visit family, Jake was always the benchmark for others. "You're so lucky, Eleanor," a young colleague said with envy. Your husband is not only skilled but also incredibly handsome. He must treat you like a queen at home. Or our aunts would say, Eleanor really hit the jackpot. Finding a husband like Jake is rare these days, good to his parents, adores his wife and son. I just smiled bitterly at those comments. Lucky. What was my luck? I gained 35 pounds after giving birth to Matthew. My belly, covered in stretch marks, would never be the same. While Jake became increasingly dashing in his expensive suits and at international conferences, I was surrounded by baggy loungewear chosen only for breastfeeding comfort. Sometimes, looking in the mirror, I no longer recognized the young woman who had graduated with honors and dreamed of her own career. I agreed to take a step back. People called it sacrifice. I called it a raw deal. Our families set us up. I was 26, and he was 30. I was a junior employee in an accounting department, and he was a promising medical resident. Both families considered us a perfect match. My parents were pleased that he was educated and had a stable job. His parents, I believe, were pleased that I was quiet, well-mannered, from a family of teachers, and most importantly, that I would take good care of the home. The wedding was held quickly. If there was love, it was a feeling cultivated within a pre-established framework. I thought marriage didn't necessarily need romance. Respect and responsibility were enough. Jake gave me that, at least for the first few years. He brought home his paycheck, remembered anniversaries, and called me honey in front of others. But that perfect facade was achieved in exchange for my own fading away. As Jake's career flourished when he was appointed a professor, his busy days became more frequent, and family dinners became rarer. On call again tonight? I would ask while prepping vegetables. It's not a call. An emergency surgery came up, or I have a conference with the senior professors, or I have to entertain some specialists from out of town. And I believed him. How could I not believe him? He's a doctor, a noble profession that saves lives. How could I dare compare my work of changing diapers and preparing bottles with the lives he was saving? I promised myself I had to be his rock. I had to let him focus on his work without worries. That's the trap of being the good wife. Once you're the accommodating one, people expect you to always be. Once, Jake received an award at the hospital's anniversary ceremony. He went on stage to receive a bouquet of flowers and a plaque. The stage lights shone brightly on him. I was sitting in the back row next to a dozing Matthew. The person sitting next to me asked, "Which doctor are you related to?" I smiled and replied, "I'm Dr. Jake Miller's wife." "Oh my goodness," she exclaimed, "you're Dr. Jake Miller's wife. How wonderful. Do you also work in the healthcare sector?" I shook my head. "No, I'm a stay-at-home mom." Her gaze changed instantly, from admiration to something I couldn't decipher. Perhaps pity, or maybe disdain. Oh, I see. That night, Jake came home with a huge bouquet of flowers, tossed it on the dining table, and loosened his tie. So tired. "Get me some orange juice, please." I went to the kitchen. When I returned with the orange juice, he was dozing on the sofa with his phone screen still on. There was a text message on the screen. "Honey, I've been waiting for you." I didn't ask who it was. I turned off his phone screen myself. I fooled myself into thinking it was just a patient or a colleague, because I was Eleanor, the polite wife of the perfect Dr. Jake Miller. But now, sitting in the coffee shop with an empty water glass, I wonder if a perfect marriage leads the wife, upon discovering she has cancer, to call a lawyer to ask about an attempted murder case. Is it really a perfect marriage? Jake's busyness wasn't just due to conferences or unexpected surgeries. It was a constant state, an invisible wall he had built between himself and his family. And Matthew and I were the people outside that wall. My life was scheduled like a machine. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., prepare breakfast for the whole family. It was rare for Jake to have breakfast at home, but I still had to prepare it. I have to leave early. "There's a morning meeting at the hospital," he always said. At 6:45, I would wake Matthew, bathe him, and feed him. At 7:15, after dropping Matthew off at daycare, I would rush to work. I was an accountant at a small firm. There were no promotion opportunities, and the salary was barely enough for expenses, but it gave me one important thing: time. I could leave right at 5 p.m. I would make a quick stop at the grocery store, pick up my son, and head back to the kitchen. By 8 p.m., the food on the table was cold. Matthew would eat while watching cartoons. "Mommy, where's Daddy?" the boy would ask, looking up with his mouth full of food. "Daddy's busy, he's saving people," I would reply like an automaton. This answer seemed to satisfy the child. His father was a hero. The boy didn't know that to be a hero to others, his father was absent from his own life. And then the real burden arrived. My father-in-law started to get sick. It was a mild stroke, but the after effects were quite severe. He had trouble walking, and his memory was failing. My mother-in-law had always been frail and didn't have the strength. It was worrying to leave the two elderly people alone in their house in a small town. "How about we bring your father and mother to our place?" I proposed to Jake. We lived in a 3-bedroom apartment. In fact, the apartment was a gift from my parents. Jake had only contributed a little for the renovation. Jake frowned. He was looking at some papers. "You handle it. I'm really busy lately. I'm in the middle of an evaluation for a new research project. Do what you think is best." Once again, he delegated the responsibility to me. So I brought my in-laws over. The house suddenly felt small. A smell of herbal remedies and ointments mixed in the air. Another repetitive cycle was added to my life. Besides grocery shopping and taking care of the child, I had to manage my father-in-law's medication, prepare his special diet meals, and give him massages. My mother-in-law was a difficult person. She didn't like seeing me wash my father-in-law's clothes in the washing machine. "Dear, your father-in-law's clothes need to be hand-washed to get them really clean, and you wash them with Matthew's? How gross." I explained patiently, "Mom, I wash them separately. His clothes are on a separate, sanitized cycle." She shot me a glare. What a waste of electricity. In our day, there were no machines, everything was done by hand. "Give it to me, I'll do it." But as she said it, she gasped for breath. I had to sit her back down in the chair. "Mom, rest. I can handle it." Jake, of course, was completely oblivious to all these invisible conflicts. He left home at dawn and didn't return until his parents were asleep. At home, his role was no more than that of a luxury guest. Sometimes he would buy a gourmet seafood soup mix and say, "Prepare this for Mom and Dad." "I don't have time these days because I'm up for promotion." I looked at the soup box and then at him. Part of my sweat, my tears, and my patience was in that promotion. The invisible cracks grew wider and wider. The nights my father-in-law was in distress, and I had to take him to the emergency room alone. Where was Jake? He was out of town, at an international medical conference. The times my mother-in-law scolded me. "Jake sacrifices so much for this family. You, at home taking care of the household, should take good care of your in-laws so your son's father has no worries. But I see you're too lazy. A woman must know how to keep her husband." I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My hair was messy. My clothes were old. I hadn't had time for a manicure all year. I had forgotten what perfume smelled like. I was just Eleanor, my in-law's daughter-in-law, Matthew's mother, and the wife of an always busy man. I started to get tired. It wasn't physical fatigue, but mental exhaustion. I no longer wanted to talk to Jake. Our conversations were limited to, "Was Matthew well behaved today? How are your parents? Did you pay the HOA fee?" We slept in the same bed, but each with our back to the other. His breathing was regular, but he felt distant. Some nights I felt him looking at his phone secretly under the covers, but I didn't want to ask. I didn't even have the energy to feel jealous or suspicious. I just wanted to sleep. A deep, dreamless sleep. As the weight of my in-laws crushed my shoulders, my body began to send signals. It was a hot summer night. After giving my father-in-law his medication and putting my mother-in-law and Matthew to bed, I could finally get into the bathroom. I was exhausted. I just wanted a quick shower and to sleep. While soaping my chest, my hand stopped. There was something in my left breast, a bit deep. It wasn't a pimple. It was hard and immobile, as if a small pea was embedded under my skin. My heart skipped a beat. I tried to calm down and pressed more carefully. It was there. It was unmistakable. I tried to reassure myself. It could be that my mammary glands were swollen due to my upcoming menstrual cycle, but something cold began to seep into my chest. I waited for Jake. That night he came home late, as usual, around 11 p.m. He smelled a little of alcohol but was lucid. "Honey," I called out softly as he changed out of his scrubs. "I just found something." Despite him being my husband, talking to Jake about my body was still awkward. He was always so professional, so impeccable. "What is it?" he asked with an irritated voice. He must have had a bad day. "I feel a small lump in my left breast," I said, pointing to the spot. Jake sighed. The sigh of someone being interrupted. "Where?" "Lie down. Let me see." I lay on the bed. The dim yellow light of the bedroom was on. He didn't turn on the main light. His golden hands, the ones that had removed hundreds of tumors, rested on my breast. It wasn't the loving touch of a husband. It was the hand of a doctor. He pressed skillfully and coldly. "Here?" he asked. "Yes, a little lower." He pressed a couple more times. It didn't take 30 seconds. "It's just a small nodule," he diagnosed, withdrawing his hand and going into the bathroom. I sat up. "A nodule, but it's hard." "Oh, here we go with your nonsense again." Jake's voice came from the bathroom along with the sound of running water. "It's just a fibroadenoma. Women your age who have given birth and breastfed, they all have them. It's normal. But wouldn't it be better to get an ultrasound tomorrow?" I was still uneasy. Jake came out, drying his hair. "You don't trust my word? I'm an oncologist. If I say it's fine, it's fine. Why would you waste money and time on an ultrasound? Our hospital is packed with patients. You'd have to wait a long time for an ultrasound. Don't worry about nonsense." His words made sense. He was the expert, and he was my husband. He couldn't wish for anything bad to happen to me. I chided myself for being too sensitive and worrying excessively. "Go to sleep now," Jake said. He turned off the light and got into bed. "I have to leave early tomorrow. I'm exhausted with this promotion business." He turned over, and in less than 5 minutes, his breathing became regular. I lay in the darkness. My right hand was unconsciously on my left breast. That small nodule was still there, lurking with a threatening presence. I decided to believe him. I had to believe him. I had no one else to lean on. Despite Jake's professional reassurance, my mind was not at ease. But life didn't give me time to obsess over that nodule. My in-laws' misfortune came like a flood, sweeping everything away. My father-in-law had weakened noticeably since his last mild stroke. And on a cold winter morning, while I was feeding him oatmeal, he suffered a second, much more severe stroke. The right side of his body was paralyzed, and he lost consciousness completely. I called an ambulance and Jake. The ambulance arrived first. Jake didn't answer his phone until 30 minutes later. "You take Dad to the hospital." "I'm in the middle of a complicated endoscopy and can't leave. This patient is a relative of someone very important. Take care of Dad first. Call me if anything happens." Thus began my hellish days. My father-in-law was in the ICU and then transferred to the neurology ward. He was bedridden there for 6 months, 6 long months. I became a shuttle service between my job, Matthew's daycare, and the hospital. My schedule was suffocating. Wake up at 5:30, prepare a large pot of oatmeal, some for my mother-in-law and Matthew, the rest in a thermos for my father-in-law. 6:30, feed the child, and at 7, take him to daycare. 7:30, I faced the biting Chicago winter wind to get to the hospital. I had to arrive before the doctor's rounds. I changed my father-in-law's diapers, cleaned him, and gave him massages. The hospital smell of disinfectant and excrement clung to my hair and clothes. When I was done, I would rush to work. I always arrived last and slipped into my seat, avoiding my boss's disapproving glare. At lunchtime, others went to eat, to have coffee. I would run back to the hospital with the thermos to feed my father-in-law the pureed soup, spoonful by spoonful, through a tube. He couldn't swallow, and the soup would dribble down his chin. I would patiently wipe it away again and again. My mother-in-law was too frail to spend sleepless nights or endure these scenes. She was in charge of Matthew's meals at home, but even that rarely went well. At 5 p.m., I would leave work and again rush to pick up my son. I would stop by the market and prepare dinner at home. The dinner for the three of us, the child, the grandmother, and me, was always hurried. After dinner, I would help Matthew with his homework and leave him with my mother-in-law. At 8 p.m., I would return to the hospital to relieve the caregiver I had barely managed to hire by the hour. During those 6 months, I lost exactly 20 pounds. My clothes were loose, my face had a sallow tone, and my eyes were sunken. I wandered around my own house like a ghost. And Jake, where was he? Still busy. The promotion to department head and a national research project seemed to occupy all his time. "I'm in the middle of the promotion process," he told me over the phone. His voice sounded tired. "This time it's very important. My future career depends on it. Hang in there a little longer, please. There are parents. I know it's hard on you, but you're my wife. You understand, right?" I understood. I understood so much that there was nothing more to say. I managed to cover the hospital expenses myself. His salary, according to him, had to go towards business dinners and networking for that promotion. My savings, my meager accountant's salary, vanished in an instant on medicine and diapers. Sometimes Jake would stop by the hospital. He would come elegantly dressed in his department's white coat and stand at the doorway of the room. He would look at his father, look at me and say, "You're doing a great job. Keep it up." He didn't touch his father. He never changed a diaper. He was disgusted by the filth. His golden hands were for holding a scalpel, not for cleaning his own father's waste. My mother-in-law, far from sympathizing with me, would scold me. "You have to take good care of your father-in-law. If something happens to him, it will be because of your bad luck. Jake is a man who does great things, and you, instead of helping him, shouldn't be a burden." I swallowed my tears at those words. A burden. I was the burden. The small nodule in my left breast sometimes ached, reminding me of its presence, but I didn't have time. I had to take care of my father-in-law. I had to be the sensible daughter-in-law of this family. My father-in-law passed away. He breathed his last on an afternoon of torrential rain. That day, I was at the office trying to finish an overdue quarterly report. The hospital called me. I ran like a moth to a flame, but I was too late. I stood silently by the bed. After 6 long months, he was finally free. And perhaps I was too. I called Jake. The phone I had always longed to hear his voice on now only emitted a monotonous tone. No one answered. I called 2, 3 times. Still silence. I called his department office. The nurse on duty said, "Ma'am, Dr. Miller is out of the country. He went to a conference in San Francisco and won't be back until the weekend." San Francisco. A conference. His father had died, and he had gone to a conference. I felt my throat burn. I didn't cry. I had no tears left. I handled all the arrangements myself. I notified the relatives. I contacted the funeral home. Jake returned. He arrived just in time for the funeral. He took the fastest flight from San Francisco and went straight from the airport to the funeral home. He wore a black suit, sunglasses, and his face was haggard from the red-eye flight. He walked in and hugged my mother-in-law to comfort her. "Mom, I'm here. I'm sorry. I couldn't be there for Dad's last moments." People looked at him with compassion. Jake is a good son, but what bad luck. Not being home when his father passes away. But he was representing us internationally, bringing honor to the family. Nothing could be done. No one looked at me. No one saw how I had lived for the past 6 months. No one knew I had prepared everything, from the burial clothes to the casket. I, in my plain mourning clothes, stood in the background like a shadow. Jake, with his black suit and sunglasses, was the protagonist of this tragedy. The grief of losing her husband, combined with the emotional shock, weakened my mother-in-law, who was already frail. She became even weaker. 3 months after my father-in-law's funeral, she also fell ill. This time she wasn't in the hospital for long. It was severe pneumonia. An old woman's resistance was exhausted. She was bedridden at home, and I began the cycle of care all over again. "Eleanor," she grabbed my hand. It was a skeletal hand. "You're a good girl. Jake was lucky to find you." I didn't know whether to be happy or sad about this final compliment. My mother-in-law passed away, another funeral. This time Jake didn't go out of town. His promotion review was over. He had been officially appointed department head. Again, he stood at the forefront and handled everything. He hired the best funeral service, received condolences, and thanked the attendees. People praised him again. Dr. Jake Miller is a true pillar for his family. Despite his parents passing away one after another, he manages everything perfectly. I again stood in the background. I boiled water, served tea, prepared food for the offerings, faithfully fulfilling the role of wife and daughter-in-law that society expected. After 2 funerals, our savings were depleted. The condolence money, according to Jake, had to be used to pay off debts he had incurred for the entertainment expenses of his department head position. I didn't ask further. I was too tired. When I returned to the office after my leaves for the funerals and caregiving, my boss called me in. "Eleanor," she said, looking at me with an apologetic expression. "I know your situation well. You've been through a lot. But as you know, accounting work requires focus and continuity. You've barely been in the office in the last year." I knew what she was going to say. The head accountant position, but the company has decided to give it to Isabel. You have more experience, but honestly, your contribution this year has been almost nil. You've taken too much leave. I nodded. Yes, I understand. I lost my promotion opportunity, the opportunity I had been waiting for 3 years. I sacrificed my career, my time, and my health to fulfill the role of a devoted daughter-in-law, and now I had lost everything. I left my boss's office and looked out the window. The Chicago sky was gray. Just then, my left breast ached again. Jake's small nodule somehow seemed to have grown. While I was losing my only chance for promotion, Jake was thriving. He was officially appointed department head, the very position for which he had been so busy and had to do so much networking while his parents were ill. Jake threw a celebration party, a grand affair at a fancy restaurant. He invited senior colleagues and people I didn't know at all. As his wife, I had to stand by his side, smiling and greeting the guests. I wore an old dress that was a bit too tight, trying to hide my plump body and haggard face. Jake was dazzling. He wore a tailored suit, his hair perfectly coiffed, and he looked 10 years younger. He went from table to table, toasting, laughing, and chatting animatedly. "Congratulations, Dr. Miller. You have a bright future ahead of you." "Dr. Miller is not only brilliant but also has such solid support at home," a colleague told me, raising his glass to me. I forced a smile. Support. I was the support that was in tatters and had lost my own career. When the party was over and we were alone, I said, "Honey," about the lump in my breast. "It seems bigger lately, and sometimes it hurts." Jake was in a good mood. He waved his hand. "Oh, worrying again. It's because you think too much. You're stressed after what happened with my parents. Relax. I already told you it was fine." His confidence made me doubt, but my body told me otherwise. That nodule was no longer a pea, it was like a small, hard date embedded under the skin. Just then, my company organized the annual health checkup. It was mandatory. Like every year, I scheduled the checkup at a private general hospital the company had a contract with. It wasn't Jake's hospital. Without thinking much, I just followed the procedure. 2 days later, I received the results by email. I opened the file and glanced at it. Cholesterol a little high, mild fatty liver, common ailments of office workers. I scrolled down to the final conclusions and froze. Breast ultrasound, upper outer quadrant of the left breast, an irregular, bordered, hypoechoic mass is observed. Vertical growth, size 1.8 x 2.2 centimeters, BI-RADS category 5. I'm not a doctor, but I know how to use Google. BI-RADS 5. Next to it was a description. Imaging findings typical of malignancy. Very high probability of malignancy, over 95%. Very high probability of malignancy. The report in my hands was shaking. I called Jake immediately. "I'm in a meeting now," he said curtly. "What's wrong?" "Come home right now," I screamed. It was the first time I had raised my voice at him. "It's urgent." That afternoon, Jake came home with a sour face. I threw the health checkup report on the table. "Look, this is your small nodule." Jake picked up the paper and read it, narrowing his eyes. I saw the muscles in his face twitch slightly, but in just a second, he regained his professional calm. "These clinics are just a racket," he scoffed. "Old equipment, incompetent doctors. As soon as they see something a little unusual, they write BI-RADS 5 to scare patients into getting expensive additional tests. They're just trying to milk you for money. But it clearly says the probability of malignancy is very high." My voice broke. "What does it matter if it's high or low?" "Listen to me," Jake said, putting down the paper. "You're my wife. If I don't worry about you, who will? Tomorrow, take the day off from work. Come to our hospital. I'll run the tests again. I'll look at the ultrasound myself. You only need to trust the results from our hospital." His words were like a sedative. Yes, he is my husband, the best specialist. How can a private hospital compare to a university hospital? The next day, I went to Jake's hospital. He took me through a back door, no number, no waiting time. He took me to the best ultrasound room in his department. "Lie down," he said in a gentle voice. He drew the curtains himself, turned off the lights, leaving only the dim light of the monitor. He applied the cold gel to my breast himself. I lay there, looking at the ceiling, listening to the clicking sound of the mouse. Jake moved the ultrasound transducer for much longer than usual. On the screen, black and white images I couldn't understand flashed by. "See?" he said finally. "What did I tell you?" My heart skipped a beat. "Look at this," he pointed to the screen. "Smooth borders, horizontal growth, no signs of infiltration. It's just fibrocystic changes, a fibroadenoma. Benign, it's benign." I sighed in relief. "Yes, I'll give you a BI-RADS 3 report a lesion with a high probability of being benign, malignancy probability less than 2%. You just need a follow-up every 6 months. But at that other hospital..." "That hospital is a hack job," Jake interrupted, wiping the gel off my breast firmly. "Do they even know how to do an ultrasound? Are you going to trust me or them?" "I trust you, honey," I whispered. "But shouldn't we do a biopsy just to be sure?" Jake looked at me, a strange, inexplicable look. "Do you like pain?" He suddenly laughed. "A core needle biopsy is sticking a needle the thickness of a toothpick into your breast. It hurts like hell. There's also a risk of bruising or infection. Your results are clearly benign. Why would you spend money and subject yourself to that?" He stood up and turned on the light. "Listen to me. Don't worry about anything. Go home, eat well, sleep well, don't stress. I'll check on you every 6 months." I got dressed again. Yesterday's fear had disappeared, replaced by infinite relief. How could I have ever doubted him? I was ungrateful. He, despite being so busy, had taken the time to address my unnecessary sensitivity. I left the ultrasound room feeling more grateful than ever to my husband, completely unaware that I had just stepped over the threshold of death. The relief I felt after Jake's ultrasound didn't last long, not because I doubted him, but because another incident occurred. It was a cold, late autumn night. Jake was busy again. This time, it was an emergency surgery for a critically ill patient. He sent me a text at 6 p.m. saying he would be very late, that my son and I shouldn't wait for him and should go to bed. I was used to it. He's my hero, after all. I made dinner for Matthew. The boy was particularly fussy that day and didn't want to eat. He said he was tired. I touched his forehead. He had a slight fever. "What's wrong?" I worried. "I'm cold." The boy snuggled into my arms. I gave him some fever reducer and put him to bed early. I thought it would be a simple cold. But in the middle of the night, I woke with a start. Not because of a noise, but because of an abnormal silence. Matthew, who always slept peacefully, was now breathing strangely, a wheezing, shallow gasp. I turned on the bedroom light and was horrified. The boy was lying there, burning like a coal, with dry lips and a flushed face. I shook him. "Matthew, Matthew, can you hear me?" The boy opened his eyes weakly, then closed them again and started to ramble. "Mommy, the robot, the red robot. Febrile Zeitsaurus." I ran to the medicine cabinet to find the thermometer. 103.8 degrees Fahrenheit. I felt as if someone was squeezing my heart. I had to get the boy to the hospital immediately. But Jake, I grabbed the phone and dialed his number. The number you have dialed is switched off or out of the coverage area. Switched off. He's in surgery. He can't use his phone in the operating room. I calmed myself down with that thought. I couldn't wait. Hurriedly, I put more clothes on the boy, wrapped him in a thin blanket, and ran out of the house. At 11 p.m., the apartment building was silent. With the boy in one arm, I pressed the elevator button with the other. I went down to the lobby and asked the doorman to hail a cab for me. To the Children's Hospital emergency room, please. That night was a nightmare. I ran alone with my son in my arms through various rooms, the blood test room, the X-ray room. Matthew cried inconsolably when they drew his blood. I cried with him. I felt so helpless and alone. I kept calling Jake. Every 5 minutes. His phone was still off. What kind of surgery lasts so long? What kind of surgery requires turning off the phone? The doctor said Matthew had acute pneumonia, that it was lucky I brought him in time, and that he needed to be admitted immediately to start antibiotic treatment. By 3 a.m., Matthew was finally stable in a hospital bed. He had an IV in his small arm. He fell asleep, exhausted. I sat beside him, drained. I took out my phone again. Still the same mechanical voice. I started to feel something was wrong, completely turning off the phone during an operation. A surgeon should always have their phone on a special mode in case of an emergency. At the very least, they should be reachable by the nurses. I dialed another number. The landline for the oncology department where Jake worked. A sleepy-voiced nurse answered. Oncology. Hello. I tried to keep my voice as calm as possible. Is Dr. Jake Miller still in the department? This is his wife. Dr. Miller? The nurse was surprised. Who would be in the department at this hour? Dr. Miller isn't on call tonight. No, I stammered. He told me he had an emergency surgery, that he's been operating since the afternoon. A surgery? The nurse yawned. What surgery? I've been here since the afternoon, and there hasn't been any such operation. Dr. Miller left at 5:30 sharp. I saw him get his car keys and go to the parking garage. He said he had an important engagement and couldn't have dinner with us. He left at 5:30. I hung up the phone. My hands were colder than the autumn night air in the hospital hallway. I was sitting in the hallway of the Children's Hospital, stunned. The words of the on-duty nurse from Jake's department echoed in my ears. He left at 5:30 sharp. But he had sent me a text at 6 p.m. saying he had an emergency surgery, a blatant, cruel lie. While his son was delirious with a high fever, where was he? Why did he lie? An important engagement. What engagement was more important than the surgery he had invented? An engagement so important that he had to turn off his phone for the entire night. Anger began to rise, an anger that surpassed the exhaustion and fear. But I soon suppressed that feeling. I couldn't fall apart. My son was here. At 4 a.m., I decided to go home. The nurse would look after Matthew. I needed to get more clothes and things for the boy. And most importantly, I had to find out what Jake's important engagement was. I took a cab home. The house was terribly quiet. I turned the key and opened the door. The living room was dark. I went into the bedroom. Jake was home. He was sleeping, sound asleep in our bed like a dead man. His work uniform was carelessly thrown on a chair, and his phone was charging on the nightstand. He had been home for quite some time. He had arrived, showered, put his phone to charge, and gone to bed. While his son and I were fighting for our lives in the hospital, I stood there looking at him. I felt something inside me break into 1,000 pieces. I didn't wake him up. I didn't scream at him. I just went silently to the bathroom and turned on the tap. I needed to wash my face. I needed to clear my head. The sound of the water woke Jake. He came out drowsily, his hair disheveled. "You're back," he yawned. "The surgery is over." Ah, he still remembered his play. It wasn't me who was in surgery. My voice was hoarse. "Matthew has acute pneumonia with a high fever. He's admitted to the Children's Hospital." Jake was startled. "What? Why? Why didn't you call me?" His face was full of concern, a perfect expression of concern. I called you. I looked directly into his eyes. Hundreds of times. It was off. Ah. Jake scratched his head in confusion. My battery must have died. I'm sorry, that surgery was really tough. When I finished, I was so tired I didn't even check my phone. Where did you operate? I asked. At our hospital. Really? Your department says you left at 5:30, I said, articulating each word. Jake froze. His fake smile disappeared. He looked at me, and I knew he knew that I knew. You must have misheard. He tried to fix it. I operated at a private clinic. It was an unofficial thing, that's why I had to have my phone off. Stop, I interrupted him. Where have you been? Jake was silent for a long time. Then he sighed. All right, I don't want to hide it from you. I had dinner with some colleagues today, had a few drinks, put my phone on silent, and didn't hear the calls. I'm sorry, I didn't know Matthew was sick. He approached to hug me. Honey, I'm sorry. I messed up. Don't be mad. Let's go see our son right now. He was a very good actor. If it had been the Eleanor of yesterday, I would have believed him, softened, and consoled myself thinking he was just a little immature, that he had just had some fun. But tonight's Eleanor was not the same. I dodged his embrace. Change your clothes. Jake seemed surprised by my coldness but didn't ask further. We went to see our son. Jake acted like an exemplary father. He asked the doctor about everything, caressed our son, and urged me to have breakfast. At noon, when Matthew's condition improved a bit, he said, You stay here with Matthew. I have to go to the department. Something urgent has come up. I nodded. He left, and I sat there. Lies. Everything was lies. The surgery was a lie. The dinner with colleagues was a lie. Someone who has dinner with colleagues doesn't turn off their phone and come home looking pristine as if they've come from far away. And suddenly, I remembered a detail. Last night, when he came back and tried to hug me to apologize, his hand rested on my shoulder. Then reflexively, it slid down and paused for a very brief moment on the lump in my left breast. Just a second, a very light touch before he immediately withdrew it. It wasn't a loving or casual touch, it was a checking touch, like a farmer prodding a pig to see if it has fattened up enough for slaughter. A shiver ran down my spine. No, it can't be. What am I thinking? He is my husband, the father of my child. But that small nodule, he said, was benign, was still there, and it was growing. From that night, Matthew was hospitalized. Something between Jake and me broke forever. No more reproaches or questions about how we were. I took care of our son in the hospital. He went to work. We were like two strangers living under the same roof, exchanging only basic information about our son. And a week after Matthew was discharged, she appeared. I received a text message from an unknown number. Hello, Eleanor. This is Lucy. I'm a friend of Jake's. Could we have coffee? I have something to tell you. Lucy. The name sounded familiar. I had once deep-dived into Jake's Facebook, checking posts from over 10 years ago. A woman smiling cheerfully next to a college-age Jake. His first love, his great lost love, the one Jake's friends sometimes joked about. I never paid it any mind. Everyone has a youthful love. A friend of Jake's? I replied cautiously. All right. See you at the daily grind. Good. I'll be waiting there. She was decisive, self-assured, and gave me no option to refuse. Curiosity and a bad feeling led me there. I wanted to know if Jake's important engagement on the night my son fell ill had to do with this friend. I put on an old office dress and tied my hair back haphazardly. When I arrived at the coffee shop, she was already there, sitting by the window. The moment I saw Lucy, I understood why they called her his great lost love. She was beautiful, a pure and sophisticated beauty. She wore a cream-colored silk dress. Her hair had soft waves, and her makeup was so subtle, it looked like she wasn't wearing any. Her aura, that of a beloved woman who lives for herself, hit me right in the eyes. She was my polar opposite. I was Eleanor, the fat, disheveled homemaker, my hair a mess from the exhaustion of caring for a sick child. She was Lucy, dazzling and elegant. Lucy smiled at me when she saw me. A very soft smile. Hello, Eleanor. I'm Lucy. Sit down. I sat opposite her. I ordered an orange juice for you, no sugar. Jake told me you're on a diet lately. A quick, concise, and precise preemptive strike. Jake. He had told her about my diet. Thank you. Water is fine, I replied, keeping my voice as serene as possible. I recently moved back to Chicago. Lucy began without hesitation. A little over a year ago, Jake and I have been back in touch. I remained silent. I let her speak. I don't know how much you know about Jake and me, but we loved each other very much before. And what does that have to do with me? I asked. Lucy smiled, still a soft smile, but her gaze was sharp. It has to do with it, because he never stopped loving me, not even after marrying you. I clenched my hands under the table. You know something? Lucy took a sip of her tea. Your Jake is a romantic. In college, when I got sick, he climbed over the wall of the girls' dorm late at night to bring me a bowl of hot soup. I suddenly remembered that in 10 years of marriage, Jake had never cooked for me even once. And, Lucy continued with dreamy eyes, he wrote my name with candles on the sports field. He said I was the light of his life. I felt nauseous. I only saw those things in soap operas. My husband, the serious man who only knew about conferences and promotions, was capable of doing something so corny. Really? I arched an eyebrow. I didn't know he had that side to him, and I've been living with him for 10 years. A flash of triumph crossed Lucy's face for an instant. Believe it or not, it's true. He probably married you because of family pressure. He needed a wife to take care of his parents and maintain the home, and you, Eleanor, you've played that role perfectly. Was she complimenting or insulting me? I looked Lucy directly in the eyes. You didn't call me here just to brag about the past. What do you want? My directness seemed to surprise Lucy. She stopped smiling. Yes, I don't want to beat around the bush, Lucy said, and then she played her winning card. Do you remember the night your son was hospitalized with a high fever? Lucy's question was like a bolt from the blue. I froze. How did she know? That night, Lucy said with a voice tinged with false guilt, I called him. I had a problem. I had had too much to drink. Jake had to take care of me. He had to take care of you. I repeated the phrase, feeling disgusted. My son was delirious in the hospital, and he, turning off his phone and lying about an operation, had gone to take care of her. I'm sorry. Lucy lowered her head. It's my fault. I didn't know Matthew was sick. Jake didn't know either. When he found out the next morning, he felt terrible. Terrible. That man who came home at 4 a.m. and slept like a log felt terrible. And his trips abroad? My voice trembled. When your father-in-law passed away, he was on a trip to San Francisco. Lucy raised her head. Her eyes were full of compassion. Eleanor, Jake never went to San Francisco. He came to see me in New York. The world started to spin, and everything began to fall apart. One lie had led to another. My entire marriage was built on lies. While his father was dying, he flew across the country to see his old flame. Do you remember the necklace he gave you for your last anniversary? Lucy asked, suddenly changing the subject. I touched my neck. I wasn't wearing it, but I remembered the white gold necklace with a small stone. The first expensive gift he had given me in years. I chose it. Lucy smiled. He doesn't know how to choose gifts for women. He asked me. He told me it was for his wife, to buy something simple, not too expensive, something to appease her. His wife. Not too expensive. The anger disappeared, and in its place, I felt an extreme emptiness. I felt so stupid, so pathetic. I was proud of that gift. I thought that despite being busy, he remembered me. It turns out I was just the recipient of an object chosen by my husband's mistress. Why? I asked. Why are you telling me all this? Lucy sighed and put down her teacup. Because I don't want to be the other woman anymore. I'm a woman too, and I need my place. I looked at her, waiting for her next words. Jake and I have been seeing each other for over a year. Ever since I came back, we've always loved each other. Jake says he's indebted to you because you took care of his parents, raised his son. He doesn't want to hurt you. He's afraid you won't be able to handle the shock. Indebted. Doesn't want to. I laughed. He didn't want to, so he cheated on me. He didn't want to, so he ignored the lump in my breast. I blurted it out without thinking, and immediately regretted it. Why had I told her that? Surprise crossed Lucy's eyes. A lump? What lump? I remained silent. Ah, Lucy said, as if she understood. You mean that lump Jake said was benign? My heart skipped a beat. How? How did she know? Jake told me. Lucy shrugged. He said you were worrying for nothing, that he had checked it well and it was a simple fibroadenoma. And he laughed. He said you've become a paranoid old woman lately. A paranoid old woman. My husband, the oncologist, had turned my illness into a joke to tell his mistress. I jumped up. I couldn't sit there for another second. Where are you going? Lucy looked at me, still with that serene expression. I'm not finished yet. I have nothing to talk to you about. Sit down, Eleanor. Lucy's voice suddenly became firm. You'd better listen to the end. Our future, yours and mine, is at stake. I don't know what force made me sit back down. Perhaps it was the curiosity of someone at a dead end. I wanted to know how far her cruelty could go. I slumped into the chair. All right, talk. Lucy smiled, satisfied. She returned to her gentle demeanor. Jake and I have already talked about it. We want to be together. I want to give Jake a real family. He's too tired of pretending with you. A real family? I asked. And what are Matthew and I? You and Matthew are the past and the responsibility, Lucy said without hesitation. And I am his future. I just want a family. I want my son to have a father. Your son? I looked at Lucy's flat stomach. I didn't understand. I'm not pregnant, Lucy said, as if reading my thoughts. I mean, I want to have a child with Jake, and my child must have a father from birth. So you want me to divorce him? It's the best for everyone, Lucy nodded. If you leave, Jake won't let you go empty-handed, he told me. He'll give you a good financial settlement. Settlement, I laughed inwardly. What would he compensate me with? With his lies? Money, Lucy said. He'll give you money. A lot of money. Enough for you and your son to live comfortably. So you won't have to do that boring accounting job anymore. She talked about my life as if she were negotiating a commodity. Look. Lucy leaned towards me, lowering her voice. Look at yourself. You're not young anymore. You're overweight, disheveled. Do you think you'll find someone better without Jake? But Jake is a department head, a professional. He needs a wife who is his equal when he goes to social events. You can't be that. I can. She was right. Every one of her words was like a dagger in my heart. But it didn't hurt anymore. Everything had just become clear. I was silent for a moment. I looked at Lucy, observed her carefully. From her expensive silk dress to the fine watch on her wrist, she was perfect. Are you done? I asked. Lucy was surprised. She expected me to scream, to pull her hair, at least to break down, but I didn't. What do you mean? I mean, are you done talking? Yes, I think so. I hope you think it over. This will be the best offer for you. All right. Now it's my turn, I said, surprised at how calm my own voice could sound. I took out my phone, placed it on the table, and activated the voice recorder. First, I said, thank you for telling me all this. Your romantic past, the story of the necklace, the trips across the country, it's all been very helpful. Lucy's face began to harden. Second, you say Jake will give me a settlement? I laughed. Do you know that the apartment we live in is my separate property? My parents bought it for me, and he only contributed a little money to renovate the kitchen. Lucy's eyes widened. What? Jake said it was his house. He lied to you again. I shrugged. Just like he lied to me. He's a pathological liar. Third, I continued, not giving her time to process, you say he's a department head and a professional. But do you know that all the money he's earned has gone to his parents' funeral expenses and the networking costs for that position? Oh, and the plane tickets to see you. Our savings, which were actually my money, are already gone. Right now, he has nothing. No, that can't be. Lucy began to panic. And finally, I concluded, you say you want a family, a place. You ask me to leave. But by what right? The right of a mistress who destroys someone else's home? Jake and I really love each other, Lucy shouted, losing her composure. We really love each other. I stood up and picked up my phone. Do you know what I was doing before you arrived? I was listening to this very recording. I pressed the play button. Lucy's voice echoed in the quiet coffee shop. Because I don't want to be the other woman anymore. He'll give you a good financial settlement. You're overweight, disheveled. I am his future. Lucy, pale as a ghost, tried to snatch my phone. Don't, I snarled. I have many copies. I've recorded our entire conversation, from you bragging about him climbing the dorm wall to you asking me to leave. Thank you for providing me with the perfect proof of your affair. Lucy collapsed into the chair, desolate. Goodbye, I said, putting my phone in my purse. Miss the one that got away. I hope you have a bright future with a man who is broke, a pathological liar, and has just been caught by his wife. I turned and left, leaving behind a pale face and a cold tea. Walking out of the coffee shop, for the first time in years, I felt I was no longer a shadow. The afternoon wind was blowing hard, but I didn't feel cold. I felt light, as if a 2-ton weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I didn't go straight home. I went directly to the lawyer Alex's office. Alex saw me and listened to the audio file I sent him. He was young, but his gaze was sharp. Eleanor, Alex said in a serious voice, this is crystal clear proof of an affair. This Lucy person confessed everything herself. We'll start the divorce proceedings immediately. I nodded. Yes, but that's not all. Alex, please send this audio file to my husband right now. Alex was a little surprised but did as I asked. He wrote a brief email, attached the voice file, and sent it to Jake's work email address. I sat in Alex's office and waited. In less than 5 minutes, my phone rang. It was Jake. I looked at Alex, and he nodded. I put it on speaker and answered. Where are you? Jake's voice was no longer that of the kind, gentlemanly department head. It was a snarl. What the hell have you done? You dare to record Lucy? Do you want to ruin my life? I let him scream. Come home right now. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, I replied. My voice was strangely calm. You've heard everything, and so have I. Eleanor, he shouted. This is illegal. I can sue you for invasion of privacy. I looked at Alex. The young lawyer smiled and shook his head. Jake, I said. For the first time in 10 years, I called him by his name. Not honey or love. We're getting a divorce. There was a silence on the other end of the line. His anger dissipated as if a bucket of cold water had been thrown on him. What did you say? His voice betrayed bewilderment. Let's get a divorce. You have someone you really love. You're tired of pretending with me, so I'm setting you free. Don't make things bigger than they are. Jake changed his tone. He realized he was in a disadvantaged position. Eleanor, I'm sorry. Lucy and it was just a passing thing. You are my wife, and Matthew is our son. Think about our son. Did you think about our son? I interrupted. When our son was delirious with a high fever and you turned off your phone to go take care of your old flame, did you think about our son? When your father was on his deathbed and you flew across the country to see her, did you think about our son? Jake stammered. I don't need your excuses. I don't want to hear them, I said firmly. We have no assets. The house is mine. The savings were spent taking care of your parents. You have nothing. As you told Lucy, with what right will you give me a settlement? Eleanor, don't be so cruel. I'm not the cruel one. Divorce. If you agree, we'll do it amicably and cleanly. If not, I'll go to court with this recording. Think about it. What would happen if a respected head of oncology was sued by his wife for adultery and an extramarital affair? There was a long silence. I knew I had hit his weakest point. Not love or family, but the honor and career he had built by sacrificing everything. Fine, he growled. If that's what you want, so be it. Let's get a divorce. He hung up. I turned off the phone and sighed deeply. It was over. 10 years of marriage decided in a 3-minute call. I suddenly remembered our wedding day, a wedding that followed a pre-written script. Me, the quiet and polite 26-year-old accountant. Him, the promising 30-year-old resident. We were introduced as the perfect match. My parents were satisfied that their daughter was marrying a doctor. His parents were satisfied to have a daughter-in-law who would take good care of the home. We didn't have the passionate love Lucy talked about. We had respect, or at least I thought we did. I thought responsibility was enough in a marriage. I became a shadow in the background so he could shine. I thought my sacrifice was worth it. It turns out it was all a comedy, and I was the biggest fool in the show. The reason I could remain calm when facing Lucy and talking to Jake was not because I was superhumanly strong. It was because the Eleanor of that day was not the same Eleanor of a month before. My change began that night in the hospital, alone with Matthew delirious with fever in my arms, sitting in the cold, white hallway, watching my little son struggle to breathe while my husband's phone was off. I realized it. I couldn't depend on anyone. The man I called my husband, the man for whom I had sacrificed my youth and career for his family, was not by my side when I needed him most. That fact was crueler than his infidelity. Infidelity can be out of desire, but abandoning your own child and wife in a life-or-death situation is cruelty to the core. From that night, while Matthew was still in the hospital, I began my own revolution. I no longer prepared elaborate dinners for someone who wouldn't return. I ordered takeout, cooked simple dishes that my son and I liked. I no longer wore baggy loungewear. I threw away all the old worn-out clothes. I ordered some inexpensive but well-fitting and stylish clothes online. I signed up for an online exercise course. Every night, when Matthew fell asleep, I would spread the yoga mat in the middle of the living room and exercise. I exercised like a madwoman, sweating profusely, but my mind felt lighter. I wasn't losing weight to please anyone. I was exercising to be healthy, to get rid of the anger and disappointment. I started to learn how to do my makeup. I watched videos on how to apply eyeliner and lipstick. I realized my face, once haggard and swollen, changed completely with a little lipstick. I started cooking for myself, making my favorite dishes, preparing myself an herbal tea, and instead of spending the night cleaning the kitchen, I sat on the balcony and read a book. Jake noticed these changes, but he didn't care. He was too busy with his important affairs. Perhaps he was even glad. I no longer nagged him. I left him alone. "You've been a bit strange lately," he said once nonchalantly, watching me put on lipstick before going to work. "What's strange?" I asked without looking at him. "You've changed. You're getting dressed up?" "I'm dressing up for myself," I replied. "I can't live looking disheveled forever." He shrugged and went to work without saying anything more. It was this inner change that gave me strength. When Lucy appeared with the air of a victor, she was mistaken. She thought I was still Eleanor, the overweight, disheveled housewife who depended on her husband. She didn't know she was facing a reborn Eleanor. I no longer felt jealous because I no longer loved him. I didn't feel pain because I saw clearly who he was. I only felt disgust and a strange calm to gather evidence. The phone with the recorder on was not an impulsive act. It was preparation. I knew this day would come. The reason I could remain calm in my confrontation with Lucy was because I no longer considered Jake the center of my world. Now he was just a terrible man I had to remove from my life, as soon as possible. The decision for the divorce was made. The lawyer Alex was preparing the papers. Since that call, Jake had been silent. He didn't come home. He probably went running to seek comfort from his great lost love. I didn't care. But just when I thought I had everything under control, I received some news. While browsing Facebook, I saw an obituary on a college classmate's personal page. It was for Martha. "In memory of our dear friend Martha, you fought bravely." I froze. Martha? Is this Martha, my accounting classmate? I quickly sent a message to another friend. "Hey, Martha from our class, what happened?" "You didn't know?" The friend replied instantly. "Martha had breast cancer. They discovered it last year, but it had already metastasized. She went very quickly, Eleanor. Poor thing, with her children so young. Breast cancer." My phone fell from my hands. My ears were ringing. Martha. I remember her. She was quiet like me. She got married and had children. She also complained once that she was tired lately and felt a tightness in her chest. I remembered my in-laws' funerals, my own exhaustion, Jake's small nodule, his diagnosis of benign, BI-RADS3, his advice that a biopsy wasn't necessary because it would only hurt. Real terror, for the first time, gripped my heart. The calm and confidence I had painstakingly built since the night my son got sick, since the confrontation with Lucy, vanished in an instant. The divorce, the infidelity, all of it suddenly seemed so trivial. What is important? Life. What if that lump? What if it wasn't benign? As Jake said, my friend Martha had died. She died of breast cancer. She was my age and had young children. Fear took hold of me. Not fear of Jake or Lucy, but fear of death. I was afraid of dying. I was afraid of leaving Matthew alone in this world with a cruel father and a strange woman. I couldn't die. My son needed me. Martha's death was a wake-up call. It woke me up from the divorce war. There was another, much more important war. I had to fight, the war for my own life. I needed to know the truth. I needed to know what exactly that lump in my breast was. And I knew I couldn't trust Jake. I had to trust myself. But before seeking the truth, there was one last thing I had to do. I had to test him one last time. I had to know if he was just a bad, unfaithful husband, or if he was truly a demon. I had to act. I had to act like the Eleanor of the past, the foolish, gullible, scared Eleanor. Martha's death was the perfect excuse. I picked up the phone. My hands were trembling, not from fear but from disgust. I dialed Jake's number. He hadn't been home for days since I asked for the divorce. He answered instantly. It seemed he was also waiting. His voice was dry and cold. What? Honey. I tried to make my voice tremble and sound scared. Jake, honey, I'm so scared. There was a silence on the other end of the line. He was assessing the situation. I just found out. My college classmate, Martha, she died. I started to cry. Very real tears, but not for Jake, but for Martha and for my own stupidity. She also had breast cancer. So what? Jake's voice was still cold, but with a hint of curiosity. I'm scared about my lump. Honey, what if? What if the other hospital was right? It's been hurting more lately. I'm scared of dying, of ending up like Martha. Nonsense, he said sharply, but I noticed his tone of voice had changed. He was calculating. I messed up. I continued my performance. I shouldn't have brought up the divorce. I was just so angry. But now I'm so scared. I only trust you. You're a doctor and my husband. Could you check me again? I don't trust anyone else. I'll only trust you. I cast the bait. The terrified wife who regrets asking for a divorce and seeks reconciliation under the guise of her health. A man as arrogant as Jake, in a disadvantageous position due to his discovered infidelity, couldn't pass up this opportunity, the opportunity to appease me and at the same time continue his plan. All right, he sighed. His voice had already softened with the attitude of a forgiving superior. Stop crying, I already told you it was fine. You worry for nothing. Come to the hospital tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'll do one last ultrasound to put your mind at ease. Yes, thank you, honey, I said with a voice full of false gratitude. I hung up the phone. The crying stopped instantly. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was wet with tears, but my eyes were as cold as ice. The last time, he was right. This would be the last time. The next morning, I wore a dress under a loose jacket. The phone in my jacket pocket had the voice recorder on. I went to his hospital, and as always, he led me through the back door. We went to the same luxury ultrasound room. Lie down, he said in a calm voice, as if there had been no argument, as if Lucy didn't exist. He had returned to his role as the professional husband. I lay down. The cold gel was on my breast again. He turned off the light. I'm scared. I'm scared of ending up like Martha. I repeated my performance with a trembling voice. Jake moved the transducer. I could feel his hand, his golden hand. This time it didn't take as long as the last time. I told you, he said with the confident voice of an expert. Unnecessary worries. So, it's still the same. Benign. BI-RADS 3. I am the expert. You don't trust my word? It's just a fibroadenoma. Your friend died because she discovered it late and had an incompetent doctor. But you have me. His arrogance was astonishing. So, no biopsy is needed, right? I asked. This was the key question. People say you have to get a biopsy to be sure. Jake chuckled, as if I had said something foolish. You like pain again? He repeated the same words as last time. I already told you. A biopsy is a very thick needle they stick in you. It hurts a lot, and there's a risk of infection. Your lump is clearly benign. Why would you spend money and subject yourself to that? He put down the transducer and threw a tissue at me. Wipe yourself off. Go home and don't think nonsense. We'll talk about the divorce calmly. Your health comes first. He spoke as if he were doing me a favor. I got up and wiped my chest. My hands weren't trembling at all. Yes, I whispered. All right. I walked out of the ultrasound room. The phone in my jacket pocket was warm. I had gotten what I needed. The final proof. He knew I feared death, that I was confused after my friend's death. And at that precise moment, he, the oncologist, used all his authority to advise me that I didn't need a biopsy. I stopped in the hospital hallway. I heard a clear click in my head. It wasn't my imagination, it was the sound of the last, thinnest thread that connected me to him breaking. He wasn't just a bad husband, he was a demon. I didn't go home. I went straight to the lawyer Alex's office. Alex turned pale when I played him the second recording. Eleanor, Alex stammered. He had to take off his glasses and clean them. This is beyond medical malpractice. He keeps repeating that a biopsy isn't necessary. Exactly, I said with a voice as cold as ice. But Alex, haven't you noticed something strange? What? He's a doctor. If he wanted to kill me, why do it in such a clumsy way? Why not prescribe a poison or make a mistake in surgery? Alex frowned. You're right. This method is too passive. He simply did nothing, just delayed your treatment. In a trial, he could claim it was a professional judgment error. It would be very difficult to charge him with attempted murder with intent. Then I said, we have to find a motive strong enough for a doctor to betray the Hippocratic Oath. A motive, Alex muttered. Love for this Lucy person? But as you said, he's broke. What would he gain by marrying her and abandoning you? No, it's not love, I said. It's money. It has to be the money. And in that precise instant, a vague memory crossed my mind. One afternoon long ago, just after Matthew was born, Jake came home with a thick stack of papers. Sign here, he said. I've taken out a life insurance policy for the whole family. It's for your future and the child's, in case something happens to me. I was very moved. I signed without reading. I, the accountant who meticulously handled numbers every day, had signed the most important financial document of my life without a thought. Alex, I grabbed his hand. Insurance, a life insurance policy. Alex froze. Eleanor, don't tell me. I have to go home right now. I have to find that contract. I ran out of Alex's office and took a cab to the apartment. Please, let Jake still be with Lucy. The house was empty. I ran straight to the study. There was a small safe there I had never touched. The password was Matthew's birthday. I opened the safe. Inside were the deeds to the house, in my name, empty savings books, and a dark blue file. Life insurance policy contract. I opened it with trembling hands. The original policy insured Jake Miller, beneficiaries, wife Eleanor, son Matthew Miller. Death benefit, $1 million. No, this wasn't it. There had to be something more. I searched through the entire file and finally found it. A contract modification addendum tucked inside. This addendum had been signed 8 months ago. 8 months. When was that? Ah, right after I first discovered the lump, right after he, with his golden hands, touched my breast and diagnosed it as a small nodule. Policyholder Jake Miller requests the modification and addition to the insurance contract on the insured, his wife Eleanor. I turned to the next page. Modifications. Increase in the death benefit of the insured Eleanor due to illness, and then the figure appeared. $5 million. Sole beneficiary, husband Jake Miller. I collapsed to the floor, the stack of papers scattered. Now I understood. It all fit. The moment I told him about the lump, the moment he, as an expert, knew that nodule was problematic, the first thing he did was not take me to the hospital. The first thing he did was call the insurance company and increase my death benefit to $5 million. He must have used the money from his business dinners, his parents' funerals, and probably a loan to pay for the increased premium on my insurance. He wasn't in a promotion process, he was making an investment. Only after that did he calmly perform the ultrasound, and when the BI-RADS-5 results from my company checkup ruined his plans, he had to use his authority to cover it up as a benign BI-RADS-3. He didn't want me to die too soon. He needed time for the insurance contract to take effect and pass the waiting period, but he also couldn't let me get treated. He wanted me to die naturally of a diseased breast cancer, a death no one would suspect, a death that would bring him $5 million. Lucy, love, it was all an excuse. He needed $5 million to start a new life with his young and beautiful mistress, after getting rid of his old overweight wife. The important engagement the night my son got sick, the trip abroad when his father died. All the money was used for this perfect plan. I didn't cry anymore. I only felt a cold that chilled me to the bone, a cold more terrifying than death. The man who had slept next to me for 10 years had been patiently waiting for me to die, like a farmer waiting for the rice to ripen. I couldn't stay in this house for another second. It wasn't a home, it was a trap Jake had set, a waiting room for death. I called Matthew. The boy was at my sister's house while I sorted out the divorce. Matthew, are you being a good boy? Mommy's almost done. I'll come get you soon and we'll go on a trip far away. Yay! The boy's voice came over the phone. To the beach, Mommy? Yes, to the beach. I swallowed hard the lump in my throat. We'll go to the beach with Mommy. Hurriedly, I packed my and Matthew's clothes into a suitcase. I took the house deeds, all the documents in my name, my passport, and most importantly, the insurance contract. I called my boss. Boss, I'm resigning. Eleanor, what's wrong? She was surprised. I have some family problems. And I'm sick. I need treatment, I said. And it was true. I'm sorry. I hung up. I left the apartment without looking back. I went to get Matthew. I told my sister I had to take the boy far away for treatment, that I needed a quiet place. My sister didn't ask further and gave me some money. I didn't go to the most famous cancer center, where Jake might have connections. I chose another large private hospital specializing in cancer, expensive but reliable, and most importantly, with no connection to Jake. I used my real name. I didn't hide. I came to fight. I presented the department head, an elderly man, with all the documents, the BI-RADS-5 results from my company, and the benign BI-RADS-3 results, signed by the department head of the university hospital, Jake Miller. The department head put on his reading glasses and compared the two ultrasound reports. Without a word, he picked up the phone. Ultrasound room. Get ready. I have an emergency patient who needs a core needle biopsy right now. I was taken to the examination room. This time there were no curtains or dim lights. Everything was brightly lit. A young female doctor performed the ultrasound, and the department head stood beside her, staring intently at the screen. Here, he pointed at the screen. Irregular borders, vertical growth, infiltration, neovascularization. Whoever called this a BI-RADS-3 needs to go back to medical school. I lay there emotionlessly, and they did the biopsy. The thick needle Jake talked about was inserted into my breast. It hurt. It hurt horribly. But this physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional pain I had suffered. At least this pain brought me the truth. 3 days later, 3 days that felt like 3 centuries, I sat across from the department head. Eleanor, he said slowly, the biopsy results are back. It's an infiltrating ductal carcinoma. The stage is estimated to be 2B. My heart sank, but he continued. But, he emphasized, the good news is that the tumor has not yet metastasized to distant sites. The lung, liver, and bone scans are clean. Lymph node metastasis is suspected, but we can treat it. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "You are simply very lucky. The cure rate at this stage is very high. If you follow the treatment plan well, it can be up to 90%. We'll do surgery first, then chemotherapy and radiation." I burst into tears. This time, they were tears of release. I wasn't dead yet. My son wouldn't be an orphan. I asked with a trembling voice, "Doctor, what if?" What if I discovered this 8 months ago, but received a diagnosis of benign and advice that I didn't need a biopsy? The department head slammed the table. He was a man of strong character. Who? What doctor made that diagnosis? Give me his name. That's a crime. If the biopsy had been done 8 months ago, it would probably have been stage 1. The tumor wouldn't be 2.2 centimeters like now, but only 1 centimeter. A lumpectomy would have been enough, and you might not have needed chemotherapy. He looked at me. To diagnose a BI-RADS 5 tumor as a BI-RADS 3, that's not simple medical negligence. That's malicious intent. I had my answer. I had a diagnosis. I had the hope of living, and I had the proof of Jake's crime. Now it was time to fight back. With the official diagnosis and the furious confirmation from the department head, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just going to get a divorce, I was going to expose Jake to the world. I contacted the lawyer Alex again. This time, it wasn't just an audio file. I had a thick medical file with the signatures of a committee of specialists, a copy of the life insurance policy increased to $5 million, and the 2 crucial recordings, one with Lucy admitting to the affair, and the other with Jake in his expert voice, advising me against the biopsy. "My God, Eleanor," Alex said, his voice trembling, This is more than enough. We will not only initiate divorce proceedings, but also file criminal charges." The charges were not for a single crime, but for 3. First, attempted insurance fraud. Second, medical malpractice with grievous results, where we would prove malicious intent. Third, adultery leading to the creation of a second family. Jake received the summons. I suppose he thought I was just bluffing. He thought I was the foolish wife Eleanor who only knew how to cry. He called me. This time, his voice was no longer growling. It was trembling. "Eleanor, are you crazy? You're suing me? Do you really want to ruin me?" "I'm not the one ruining you," I said calmly over the phone. "I'm just saving myself and seeking justice. You had your chance. You could have just been a bad husband, but you chose to be a demon. I'll lose everything. Don't you think about our son? Our son will live without a father. Our son is better off without a father like you." I hung up. Jake and Lucy, of course, hired the best lawyers. They started arguing that it was just a professional judgment error, that the life insurance was a normal expression of a husband's concern, that the relationship with Lucy was just a fling, not a common-law partnership. They underestimated me. They underestimated a meticulous accountant and a betrayed wife. I suddenly remembered something. Over a year ago, when I started suspecting something was off with Jake's frequent trips, I did something I thought was crazy. I secretly installed a small, long-lasting GPS tracker under his car. I did it hoping to get proof of infidelity, but then my in-laws got sick, and I was so exhausted that I completely forgot about its existence. I opened the app on my phone. The app I had hidden deep in a folder was still working. I had been paying the annual fee. The history appeared. It wasn't just a record of trips to and from hotels, it was a fixed schedule. Every day, Jake left work at 5:30 and didn't come home. He drove to a luxurious apartment on the outskirts of the city and stayed there. Every night, that green dot would move at 6 a.m. the next morning to go to the hospital. The night my son had a fever, he was there. The night his father was on his deathbed, he was also there, even before flying across the country to see Lucy. I gave this address to Alex. Find out who lives in this apartment and what's there. A week later, Alex called back. "Eleanor, hold on tight. Tell me." The apartment is leased in that Lucy's name, and guess what I found out? According to the neighbors, she doesn't live alone. She lives with a child. A child a little over a year old. Over a year old. I did a quick calculation. Lucy had been back for over a year. Jake. I felt my throat burn. Jake and she had a child. "Yes, that's right, Eleanor," Alex said. "This is the definitive proof of a de facto relationship. He wasn't just unfaithful, he formed a second family." My final counterattack was financial. Jake, through his lawyers, began to demand the division of assets. He claimed that although the house was in my name, he had paid for a large part of the renovation. He demanded half. I just laughed. As an accountant, I kept everything. I presented a thick stack of receipts: my father-in-law's 6 months of hospital expenses, the caregiver's costs, the medicines, my father-in-law's funeral expenses, my mother-in-law's funeral expenses, the value of the gourmet soup mixes and tonics he brought as gifts. Your Honor, I said, all this money was spent from our common savings, and most of it came from my salary. Mr. Miller's salary, as he himself said, was allocated to business dinners and his head position. I don't object. I just want to point out that if there were any common assets, they were all used for his parents, and I even had to add money from my own pocket. He not only has nothing, but he owes me money. Jake, sitting in the defendant's chair, turned pale. He never imagined his disheveled accountant wife had kept all the receipts. The trial caused a huge stir. An eminent head of oncology, a top medical expert, accused by his wife of terrible crimes. At first, the press was cautious, but as the irrefutable evidence piled up, they began to report. The case went viral. Jake's hospital, unable to withstand the pressure of public opinion and health authorities, decided to immediately suspend him from his position until there was a court ruling. His proud friends and colleagues, all those he had entertained with money, distanced themselves from him. They were afraid of being implicated. What wouldn't a doctor who tried to kill his wife for an insurance scam be capable of? The career Jake had built by selling even his conscience collapsed in a single day. He was socially annihilated. The trial was held, and everything became clearer than water. The recording of my conversation with Lucy, the recording of Jake advising me against the biopsy, the copy of the $5 million life insurance contract, the GPS history, the birth certificate of Jake and Lucy's child, and the thick stack of receipts for the funeral expenses I had accumulated. Jake's lawyer had nothing left to argue. All his defense efforts seemed ridiculous in the face of the mountain of logical and massive evidence. Jake no longer looked elegant in court. He was gaunt, with graying hair. He turned to look at me. His eyes contained no remorse, only hatred. He hated that I hadn't died naturally. The court delivered its verdict. The defendant, Jake Miller, is found guilty of attempted insurance fraud, with a particularly cruel and planned motive and method, and of adultery, and maintaining a de facto relationship with the birth of an extramarital child. The court also recommended to the health authorities a further investigation for violation of health law with malicious intent. In total, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Lucy, as an accomplice to the crime of adultery, but thanks to having confessed everything in hopes of a reduced sentence, was sentenced to 1 year in prison with a suspended sentence. Justice had finally been served. I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was dazzling. I wasn't happy, just relieved. It was finally over. The next day, I checked into the hospital with my suitcase and Matthew. The boy would stay with my sister while I had my surgery. The department head, the elderly man, operated on me himself. The surgery was a success. The tumor was removed, and the lymph nodes were dissected. Then came chemotherapy. My hair started to fall out. I was already mentally prepared. I shaved my head. Matthew saw me. At first, he was a little scared, but then he smiled. "Mommy, you look like a monk from a movie." I smiled too. Yes, Mommy is a monk. Now I'm going in search of the sacred scriptures, the scriptures of life. I was no longer Eleanor, the overweight, disheveled housewife. I was thin, but healthy. I was no longer anyone's shadow. I was Eleanor, a woman who had crossed the threshold of death, who had removed a malignant tumor from her body and a harmful tumor from her life. I sat in the hospital room and looked out the window. Spring was coming, the buds were sprouting. The future for me and my son would still have many difficulties, but now it was bright, a dazzling and hopeful light that had overcome adversity.